Hello all, welcome back to the GV Reddy Automation World. Right, please subscribe to the channel if anyone not subscribed. Right, please encourage me so that we can I can create more videos on more interesting topics. Right, immediately we will continue and jump into the topic. Right, in this session I will explain what are the different interview questions we can expect. Right, that we discuss in this session. Right. What topic is exception handling? Right. What are the different questions we can expect? Right. What is exception handling in Java? First question. Right. Exception handling is why we need to use. Right. Exception handling is a right to handle the errors. Right. Runtime errors to make sure the flow of the application will continue without breaking. Right, exception handling is a mechanism to handle the runtime errors to continue the program without any issues. Here we can use different keywords like array, try, catch, finally, throws to manage the exceptions. For example, a simple example, this is in the try block we are dividing by 0. What will happen if we divide it by 0? We'll get immediately arithmetic exception. Right, try, catch, finally. Right, we will learn more in the further questions. Right, simple exception. Right, exception handling we will use to continue the normal flow of the execution, right, without any issues. What is the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions? Right, what is the checked and unchecked exception? Right, checked exceptions we need to suppose checked exceptions we must handle at a compile time while writing the code itself. Suppose you are trying to read the file, right? We must handle the exception there itself. Otherwise, we will get compilation exception. We are trying to connect to the database, we need to handle. Right, checked exceptions we need to handle at a compile time. While writing the program itself, we have to handle either by using try catch or throws keyword. Either by try catch or throws keyword. Unchecked exceptions are occur due to runtime error. Unchecked exceptions are runtime exceptions. Runtime exception we know it, that is not mandatory to handle. We don't know because of data issue. Suppose if you are dividing by 0, we get a arithmetic. If we call any method on the null pointer, if we try to access index more than available, right, available size, we will get out of index. Right, these are all due to programmatic issues or data issue. Right, we cannot predict when these errors will come. So these are all runtime exceptions. It is not a mandatory to handle at the time of writing the code. Right, simply one more important question: what is the hierarchy of the exception? Right, throwable is the root class for all the exceptions. Every class will have object is a root class. Every right, throwable is the root class. Under throwable we have two types. One is exceptions, one is errors. Right, errors we cannot handle in the code. Right, stack overflow error, out of memory, virtual machine. Right, these are all we cannot handle in the code. Only exceptions we can handle. Right, exceptions means what? We have a checked exceptions, unchecked exceptions. Right, checked exceptions, unchecked we can also call as runtime exception. Checked exceptions what? IO exception, class not found exception, SQL exception. Right, these green color things are checked exceptions. Runtime exception, arithmetic, null pointer, number format, index out of bounds exception. Right, index out of bounds, we have array index out of, string index out of bounds exception. These are all unchecked exception, or we can also call as a checked exception. That is runtime exceptions. Alright, sometimes interview they will ask, write down the or explain about the hierarchy also. Right. Then what is the difference between throw and throws? Right. Throw is used to throw an error explicitly. I want to throw an exception. Right. We can throw throw new. We can use throw new keyword. Right. Throw is used to throw an exception. Right, how to throw by using throw new any exception, throw new exception, and we can pass the message. What is the exception message? Throws we can use in the declaration section. Right, if a method is there in the method header, right, in the method header we can by using throws keyword we can throws and then IO exception. Any number of exceptions we can have comma separated throws. Throws we will use at the method header. Throw by using throw we can throw an explicitly exception that we can throw anywhere in the code. Right, what are the key exception handling keywords in the Java? First one is right try. Try contains the code that may throw exception, that may throw a exception. Right, in the try block, maybe we are thinking this piece of code may be in the future might throw exception. We are not confident about right that code, then we can keep it in the exception. Catch will handle exception whenever exception occurred in the try block. Whenever try block exception occurred, catch block will execute. Finally, will execute always whether exception is occurred or not occurred. Throw is used to throw explicitly to throw an exception. Throws declares the exception that a method can throw. Right, throws keyword we can use in the declaration section. Right, can a finally block be skipped? Yes, the finally block is skipped in these cases. Right, when the JVM exists during the try and catch block using system.exist. Right, system.exist. If you call system.exist, finally block will not exist. If the thread running, right, if the thread running the try block is interrupted or killed, if the thread is running the try block is interrupted or killed, then also it will not execute finally block. But usually we will not do. But for interview purpose, right, we can tell system.exist. We can remember that. Right, whenever we will call JVM exists. Right, finally block we can skip. Can you catch multiple exceptions in a single catch block? Yes, from starting Java 7, multiple exceptions can be caught using the single catch block separated by red pipe symbol. Right, suppose if we say try and catch, in the catch we can have arithmetic exception, pipe symbol, null pointer exception, and we can have only child exception we can handle. Suppose if we write a exception here, it will not accept only arithmetic and null pointer exception, string index out of bounds, array index out of bounds, those only it will allow. Right, parent classes it will not allow. Right, by using pipe symbol we can separate. What happens if an exception is not caught in the Java? Right, what will happen if exception is not caught in the Java? It propagates up the call stack. If no method in the call stack handles it, the JVM terminates the program and print the stack trace. Right, suppose there are multiple, suppose A calling B calling C. In the C block, C method, exception is occurred. What it will do? First it will verify is there any exception code, try and catch is there in the C method. If it is not there anything, it will transfer request to B. Who called C? B. Then it will go to B. Is there any try catch block? If not there, then who called B is A. It will go to A. Then it will verify is there any try and catch. If it is not there, then it will hand over to the JVM. JVM terminate the program. It will print the exception details. Right. That is the what happens if exception is not caught in the Java. Right. Can you create your own exceptions in Java? Yes, we can create either runtime exceptions or checked exception, unchecked exception. We can create. Right. We can create how to create a class. We can give the name of the exception, extends exception, either exception or a runtime exception. We can. If we extend exception, it is a checked exception. Then constructor. In the constructor, we can pass the message and then inside a constructor call the super class with this message, whatever message we will say. And like this we can create our own exception. What is the purpose of the finally block in Java? Right, finally block, if you want to execute any code always whether exception is occurred or not, we will write finally block. Right, finally block mostly we will use for cleanup operations or closing the file database connections, right? Cleanup operations like closing the files and database connections. We will use finally block. Can a try block exist without a catch block? Yes, we can write it. Try block can exist without a catch block if it is followed by finally block. Try alone we cannot write, but a try with final we can skip catch block by using try and final. Right, only catch block can we write, we cannot write. Only finally block, we cannot write. What is the difference between error and exception? What is the difference between error and exception? Right, error represents serious problem that usually beyond the application control, like out of memory. These are all unchecked and not meant to be caught. Right, errors we cannot catch. Right, out of memory. Memory was full in the system. What we can do? We cannot do. Right, execution will stop. Then we have to remove some memory, then we have to execute it again. But exceptions we can handle in the code. Right, represents condition that application might want to catch, such as IO exception, arithmetics. Exception we can handle in the code. How does exception propagation work in Java? Right, exception propagation is the process of forwarding exceptions up to the call stack if method does not handle exception. If it passes to the caller. This continue until exception is either caught or propagates. What it means? Suppose I have a method A, I have a method B, right? I have a method C. Right, A is calling B, B is calling C. Right, C, some exception is occurred here. Right, in C method, some exception is occurred. Now what will happen? Immediately it will verify is there any try and catch in the C block, C method. If it is there, catch block will execute. In the catch block, you don't have any throw, right? If you want to forward, right, forward exception from C to B, how you will transfer? In the catch block, if you throw again explicitly throw, right, exception, it will transfer that exception to B. If you don't throw, just try and catch, in the catch block you did not do anything, just print, then it will stop execution C itself. Suppose there is no try catch, right? There is no try catch. What will happen? It will hand over who called C B. It will hand over exception to B. Suppose B also don't have any try and catch. It will hand over to A. Who called B A. Then A, if A also don't have, then it will hand over to JVM. It will hand over to JVM. JVM will print the details. Right, there are multiple scenarios will come. If C is a try and catch is there, not throwing any exception, it will stop. It will not navigate back. If C is throwing in the catch block, it will come to B. B is suppose B is a try catch is there. In the catch block, it is not doing anything. In the B block, B method, it will stop execution. It will not navigate back. Right, like this propagation will go. Right, what is the difference between final, finally, finalize? Right, final is a keyword we will use for constants, methods, right, in the inheritance. Right, if we use the final at constant, right, suppose if we create any variable with final, what will happen? We cannot modify. If we write a method as a final, we cannot override in the subclass. If we write a final at class level, we cannot subclass it. Right. Finally is a block for we will use in the exception handling, right, for cleanup code. Finalize is a method in the object class. Right. It is called by the garbage collector before destroying an object. Right. Finalize is a method of the object. It is called automatically before garbage collector. Right, it is called by the garbage collector before destroying an object. Right, what happens when exception is thrown in a catch block? Right, what will happen if exception is thrown in the catch block and not caught within the same block? It propagates to next higher level. Right, who called? Right, just now we have seen ABC. Right, in the C method we got a exception. C method is throwing in the catch block. What it is doing? It is throwing again exception. It will now propagate back to who called C B. It will go to B. That will happen. It propagates to next higher level in the call stack, just like exception from try block. Right? Can you nest the try blocks? Yes. We can have a try. Inside a try again we can have a try and catch. Right? We can have inside a catch block also we can have try and catch. We can nest it. What is the difference between get message and print stack trace? Right? Get message returns a brief message about the exception, but print stack will print the detailed stack trace of the console for debugging. Right, message, suppose arithmetic exception. Get message will print only arithmetic exception, but print stack will print message and then which line, right, exception occurred, and the stack trace also, who called this, right, how the propagation happened. Those are all details print stack will print. Right, then can an interface in Java includes throws clause in its methods? In interface in Java includes throws clause in its methods. Yes, methods in interface can declare exception using throws clause. The implementing class must handle or declare these exceptions. What happens if finally block throws an exception? Right, if the finally block throws an exception, it overrides any exception that was thrown in the try and catch block. Right, suppose there is an exception occurred in the try and catch, but you are throwing finally block an exception, it will override. If suppose a try block some exception is occurred, in finally block also you are overriding exception, you are throwing some other exception, it will override the try block, it will throw finally one. Right, can you rethrow an exception? Yes, an exception can be rethrown using the throws keyword. Right, suppose in the try block we are throwing an exception, in the catch block again we can rethrow the same exception. We can catch the IO exception, we can rethrow the same exception. Right, what is exception handling? Why exception handling is important? Alright, why it is important? The right program should continue right without any issues. Right, program continues execution after handling errors. Resources like database connections should be properly closed. Right, suppose you connected to database. After while reading the data you got some exception. If you don't close properly, what will happen? It will be connections will be still alive. Right, so we must close the files or database connections before whether exception is occurred or not occurred, we must properly close. Better readability and maintainability of the code. Right, better readability and maintainability of the code. Can a catch block have generic exception? Right, what are the its implications? Right, yes, a catch block can catch a generic exception. However, it's considered a bad practice unless necessary because it catches all exceptions. Right, include ones that may not be intended for handling. It can make debugging difficult. A specific exception won't caught explicitly. Right, suppose here see, I there is a scenario in the try block may occur arithmetic exception, right, number format exception, string index out of bounds exception, anything can occur maybe. If you generically, if you handle, it will handle all, right? This is the super class for all the exception. Now what will happen? Right, if I want to suppose a null pointer exception is occurred, I want to do some piece of code. If arithmetic exception, I want to do some other code. Based on the exception type, I want to do different actions. Then if we write generically, what will happen? Generic exception, if we write, what will happen? Right, we cannot do like that. Right, it is not recommended, but right, it's better to have, first we have to write individual exceptions, then finally we can have more. Other than you cannot expect what exception will come, you know few, but few we cannot predict. To handle those we can write an exception. Right, we can follow, right, first specific exceptions we can handle, then generic one. What is the difference between throw and throwable? Throw is used to throw an exception, right? Our own exception. If we want to throw an explicitly an exception, we will use throwable. What is throwable? It is an superclass for all the exception and errors. It has two main subclasses, error and exceptions. Can a finally block execute if a return statement is present in the try block? Yes, finally block always it will execute whether exception occurred or not. Return red interviewer will confuse us. If try block has a return, we thought maybe it will return from this method, right? No, it will execute finally block, then only it will return. Can a constructor throw exceptions in Java? Right? Yes, we can. The constructor can throw exception using throw keyword. Right. What is the exception chaining in Java? Right. Exception chaining is the process of wrapping one exception inside another to provide more context. It is achieved using constructor of the exception. Right. One exception. Right. We can wrap in another. Suppose here see throw new IO exception. We are catching that exception. We are throwing again throw new runtime exception, and inside of it runtime exception we are sending IO exception details. IO exception details. Right. It is achieved by using constructor of an exception class that accepts a throwable cause. Right. We can chain it. Right. Here what we are doing simply runtime exception constructor we are passing another exception details. Right. That's it. Can a try block be followed by multiple catch blocks? Yes. Try block can be followed by multiple catch blocks, handle different types of exceptions separate, but it should follow order. Child to parent only. First child, then parent. If you write parent first, it will throw compilation error. Right, child to, right, in interview they will ask, right, can we write any order? Right, no, only child to parent. Is it possible to catch an exception thrown in a static block? Right, this is one more typical question. We will not get usually, but typical. Right, inside static block. Static block when it will execute? When the class loading time. When the class loading time, it will execute. We cannot, right? We cannot handle. In the static block, we can have a try and catch, but this exception we cannot handle again outside. Right, cannot directly, but however exception can be handled indirectly using try and catch inside a static block. We can handle, but outside we cannot handle. What happens if a method declares checked exception but does not throw it? Right, what happens if a method declares in the declaration section, right, checked exception, throws keyword, by using throws keyword checked exception is there but it does not throw it. Right, inside throws keyword when we will use in the try block, there is a checked exception. You are throwing a checked exception, right, then we need to handle in the throws. We are not throwing any checked or runtime exception, we are not throwing, but you still have a throws keyword. What will happen? Nothing will happen. If a method declares checked exception but does not throw it, still it will compile successfully. However, declaring unnecessary exception discouraged. It is unnecessary complexity. Right? What will happen? Tomorrow someone is came. Okay, this method is throws some exception. He might think, okay, maybe right some exception we will get. Unnecessarily confusion will come. Right? So it's better to avoid. Can exception be caught in the same order as they are thrown? Right? No. Exceptions are caught in the order of the catch blocks, not the order they have thrown. The most specific exception type should be handled first to avoid compilation error. See, here what is the question is something order of the handling. Right? Order of handling they are asking. Right? Try block some code catch. First generic exception. If we write generic exception, then child exception. What will happen? This will unreachable code because all exceptions will be handled by using this parent. Right, if you write after parent child, it will get compilation error, untraceable code. So we have to write, right, we cannot write like this. Can exception be caught in the same order as they thrown? No. We have to follow child to parent only, child to parent, parent to child we cannot. What is the purpose of try with resource statement? Right, try with resource statement. Right, the try with resource statement is used automatically to close the resources. Right, that implement auto closable and closable interface. Right, suppose if you reading the file, suppose if you see how we will write try and buffer reader catch, finally we will close buffer reader dot close. Usually we will do like that. But if we use inside a try, right, try with brackets, right, see inside a brackets we can write buffer reader. If we write like this, we no need to close it, it will close automatically. It will close automatically once the execution done. Right, we no need to explicitly close. That is the advantage of try with the resource. Try with the resource, it will close automatically. But buffer reader should implement this auto closable or closable interface. Then only it will close automatically. Right, what are the runtime exceptions and why are they not checked? Right, runtime exception, why are they not checked? Runtime exceptions are subclass of runtime exception that present programming errors such as null pointer, array index. They are not checked at compile time, right? Because we don't know runtime exception when it will occur because of data issue. Suppose you are reading data from the database, there is no data suddenly. We will get exception, right? We cannot predict that, right? Right? That is not a compile time. We cannot handle at compile while writing the code itself. We cannot predict. Right, you are reading the data from the file, there is no file. Right, inside a file there is no data. Right, we cannot predict those things. Right, that's why we cannot handle at the time of writing code itself runtime exception. We cannot handle like because of that. Right, usually those indicates a bugs need to be fixed rather than exception that can be handled. Right, all errors we cannot handle. That is also in while doing automation. Right, we will handle some of the exception. Right, if we handle those exception, right, unnecessarily suppress the bugs of the application, we will suppress. So we must be very careful while doing the try exception handling. Right, we should not suppress any exception. Can you handle out of memory error? Right, technically, while out of memory error can be technically we can handle, but it is not recommended. What will happen if you catch in the catch block, if you out of memory, if you catch memory is full, if you catch, what will happen next? Again it will fail. Right, it indicates serious issue. Attempting to handle it may lead to be unpredictable behavior because JVM may not enough memory to recover the code. Right, you are catching, that is fine, but the following code will not execute because already memory is full. Right, it is. What is the order of execution when try catch finally used together? Right, first it will execute try. If there is no exception, finally block will execute. If there is any exception, try will execute, exception block, catch block, then finally block. Right, right, these are the some of the questions we can expect in the interview. If any questions, right, you need more explanation, just comment in the comment section. Right, I will explain it more. Right, please subscribe to the channel. Right, thanks for watching.